What's up? What's up, Earth Rockers? It's your boy Shovatar. I'm here today to talk about a different game, believe it or not. New game. Castlevania Chronicles. Weird game. Two games in one game. PS1 game. Weird game. Chronicles. Game weird. Strange thing. Game is. Castlevania. Go Simon to Castle. Is thing. As was. Two-man. Thing do. uh, okay. Yeah, okay. Oh, big fancy fat lady. Okay, Castlevania Chronicles. Castlevania Chronicles is a game that was that requires some explanation, kind of like how Dracula X does. Um, okay, seriously, Castlevania Chronicles is a game released for the PS1 um, in 2001, I think, and it has two different games inside of it. It has original mode and arrange mode. Original mode is a more or less one-to-one remake of a game that was originally released in 1993 in Japan called Akumajo Dracula, which is just what they call Castlevania over in Japan. And it's just a remake of Castlevania, well, a reimagining of Castlevania 1. And was released in Japan in 1993 specifically for the Sharp X68000, which was specifically a gaming hobbyist computer. And because this game was released specifically for a platform that was meant for people who were dedicated gaming hobbyists, they went into it saying, well, we gotta make this shit hard. Because we're not making this for like a general console market anymore. We're making this for people with enormous balls. So kind of like the Genesis, this game was sort of designed to be difficult. And I think it succeeded more than Bloodlines did in that case. This is the hardest thing I've done probably since Castlevania 3. Um, and a lot of that has to do with um, well, first of all, let me just say what's going on now. Level 1, of course, is not difficult. Although, actually, the Bat Boss is kind of strange, because, like, the way the Bat Boss works is you hit it, and then it, like, separates into smaller bats that, like, lunge at you, and you just have to try to, like, juke their lunge. It's very strange, but basically they turned the first boss into, like, an actual boss. Obviously in Castlevania 1, the Bat Boss at the start of level 1 just kind of sits there and dies, but here it actually can kind of kill you if you don't know what's going on, so it's kind of like a real boss fight. Um, and I'll talk more about the game's difficulty. Actually, I'll talk about the game's difficulty right now, because level 2 is actually where the difficulty spikes for the first time. Level 2 is also the worst level in the entire game, so I'm going to start off being kind of negative here. I like this game a lot, but and just to be clear about like terminology, when I talk about when I talk about the X68 game, I'm just gonna say original mode because that's what it's called in Chronicles, and then when I talk about the other version of this game that's present on the PS1 that was developed for it, I'm gonna call it arrange mode because that's what it's called in the game. I should actually mention, well, I'll talk about level 2 for now. Okay, this level is terrible because of two things. It's kind of like Alucard 7 and 3, where it's not just one thing, it's several things that are compounded together to make the level really bad. So first thing you may have already noticed looking at the footage is that there have been levels in Castlevania games with bats before, but there is no other level that I've yet encountered that's literally nothing but bats. Level 2 is nothing but bats in a cave. It's bats in a cave level almost non-stop, with like almost nothing else augmenting it. I mean, you're gonna see a couple of like gargoyles there and like a eyeball here, but it's mostly just the bat show. And then later on, when we get to level, we get to the and then, but the real shit show is when we get to stage 6, which is the last stage of the level. This game is organized like Castlevania 1 is, where every level is 3 stages. So it's, at the very least, the levels don't go on for too long. It's not like Castlevania 4, where like if a level is terrible, then it's bad because you're going to be stuck there for a long time. The levels in this game are at least relatively short. Like I think this video is going to be what, 45 minutes, 44 minutes? Okay, that's pretty civilized. So at the very least, the shitty parts don't outstay their welcome, but that means the good parts don't really too. And I'll get back to talking more about the game generally, but I really have to talk about this part here coming up, where you get on a raft. I mean, it should be obvious, like from what you're watching, why this is bad, but I'll try to explain it as it goes along. So, okay, if you didn't know that that rock was there, now you're dead, because you just got knocked off the raft. If you didn't know that rock was there, now you're dead, because you just got knocked off the raft. If you didn't know that rock was there, you just got knocked off the raft, because now you're dead. And if you didn't know, where is it? Come on, that rock was there, you just got knocked off the raft and now you're dead. So right there, that's 4 trial and error, way too fast to react to, horseshit environmental hazards that you have to memorize in order to get through that spot. You also might think that just crouching to avoid the fish guy's fireballs is like a guaranteed way to not get hit and knocked off the edge, but when you get bumped up by the raft getting knocked around into the air, even if you're crouching, you can still get hit by those fireballs and knocked off. So that part is just utter horseshit. And then this guy's even worse. You're not going to see it, but everything this asshole does will... So he'll do 2 things. He'll either hit the raft with his tail, which will knock the raft around, or he'll breathe fire on you and try to knock you off the raft. And I have no fucking clue how you don't get killed by this guy. Like, I've killed that boss without the stopwatch before, but I just don't get... I don't know how. Like, I don't know what I did differently between the different attempts. It's one of those. And this is especially irritating because the stopwatch that's available in level... There is another stopwatch available in level 2, but it's, like, hidden behind... It's, like, behind 2 bone dragons. And you have to get it by trying to whip... Like, there's this dude with a flute who comes out. This is going to sound weird, but this is what happens. There's a dude with a flute who comes out, who like starts like has like summons like items that spin around in the air, and you got to whip the right item, and it's actually fucking hard to do. So it's like an item that's available if you whip the item in the air as it's spinning around. So it's like it's available, but it's really not available. So it's just fucking terrible. So level 2 is like the biggest problem with this game. Fortunately, they put it towards the start, like they knew it was garbage, so you get it out of the way fast, and you can get to the rest of the game, which doesn't ever really get as bad as level 2 ever again. Most of the other problems with this game are more about like annoyances, but level 2 is like really just a total shit show from beginning to end, because it's like you have this obnoxious level, it's nothing but bats into a terrible boss fight. Something that I should mention, because anybody who knows anything about this game, when they hear me say that original mode is a 1-to-1 remake of X68, is going to be mad at me, is that it's not technically a 1-to-1 remake. There are some audio differences. Well, first of all, there's loading between levels in the Chronicles original mode, which was not present in the original 93 release. There's some audio differences, like you can pick all these different audio options in the 93 version, and I've also heard some people say that there are differences in terms of the difficulty because the AI is different. Like apparently they nerfed the AI for some of the enemies in the Chronicles re-release, but I really in Chronicles original mode compared to the 93 original version, but I really don't understand. But I haven't heard any details about that, so it's possible that this game is slightly easier than the original X68. I really don't really care. Normally that is the kind of thing that I would care about, but I don't really, because for one thing, like trying to emulate. I mean, look, I'm not a bright man. Okay, I need clean, simple, easy emulation software that like a housewife could understand. And trying to emulate anything more complicated than like big flagpole video game consoles is intimidating to me, and it's difficult for me to navigate. So if I really loved this game and I really wanted more of it, and it was really important to me to play the original X68 version, I could, like it's available, it's possible, but I really am not that interested in the prospect. I don't really care. And also I think this game is hard enough, quite frankly. Another thing that's actually worth noting about this game is that, and this is actually going to become relevant to the boss. Okay, this part fucked me up because I didn't like get it at first. I didn't realize that the pillar would like stop at the top before the spikes. I thought you had to like jump on that pillar to get it to go up, then like jump back on it as it was going down, then jump across. This level is also annoying. This level is not as bad as level 2. Like no level in this game is as bad as level 2. But this level is bad because ice is not fun. It's not fun to not be able to control what you're doing, and because the music is quite frankly farcical. I don't know if you've been like I don't know if you guys have been listening to it, but this music is comical. It's like it's a goofy carnival ride. Wicked Child is supposed to be adventurous and harrowing, and this just sounds silly in my personal opinion. One of the biggest arguments people like to have about this game is whether which soundtrack is the best one. Because there's like 5 different soundtracks. There's like 3 or 4 for the original mode that you could choose from, and there's the special arrange mode version. But something that I'm going to point out right now is that one difference between this version of the game that I have, the US version, and other releases, is that in other releases of this game, apparently you can throw sub-weapons slightly higher, which is actually, which might sound like a small difference, but it's actually extremely relevant. And this is a place where it is, because if I was playing a different release, I could be jumping up on one of those smaller platforms there and throwing across at this guy to hit him, but because I'm playing the US release, if he's too high up, I just can't fucking hit him. So that's actually important. And there's a couple places and a couple of other levels where the lower sub-weapon height is also super important. And that confused me because when I was trying to learn, I was trying to get information about this game. I found a YouTube video, which I'll link in the description, of some guy, some absolute beast, going through the hardest version of original mode and just like shitting on everything. But he was doing stuff where he was jumping up and throwing the cross at what seemed like the apex of his jump and hitting things, and I just couldn't do it. And I thought it was because the timing for throwing sub-weapons in this game feels a little bit strange. I can't really explain why. It seems like the wind-up is longer than it should be. So the timing for jumping and throwing a sub-weapon at the very apex of your jump is a little bit different. And I thought that I was just fucking it up, but I think what's going on is that he had a different version of the game where that was possible. And it's not a gigantic advantage, but it is relevant, especially on that fight. On that fight, if you're playing a version of the game where you can throw sub-weapons higher up, you just fucking annihilate that guy. But without that, you actually have to wait for him to finish his patterns, or to get through the pattern, the parts of the fight where he goes high up, and you just have to survive whatever he does. Not great. Not great. Oh well. This level's pretty cool. I like the music in this level. I think somebody once said there's no such thing as a bad remix of Bloody Tears. That's basically true. I don't think I've ever heard a version of this song that I don't like. Chronicles is another remake of the first game, I should clarify. This is Simon Belmont again. He looks a little bit weird. I don't really like the way that Simon looks in this game, but I think overall the game looks fine. I don't have any problem with the visuals, except for Simon. I think Simon's a little bit strange, but this is so dumb. Okay, here's why this is dumb. So this little like invisible passageway here, like some Simon's Quest shit. The reason why I have a problem with this is because there's meat in there. And Castlevania games are designed so stringently around the availability of health that having a meat in the middle of a level in a game that's as hard as this be behind a fucking invisible wall is just fucking ridiculous. Like, don't fucking do that shit, man. This is that like, oh, we're making it for the hardcore audience. That's what that shit is right there. It's like we don't want to give you health for free. We're gonna fucking hide it. I don't know. I think it's absurd. So you might notice this is a remake of Castlevania 1, but they've put the levels slightly out of order. This time you go from the level 4 was split into a cave section getting its own level, then the second section with the Igor Gauntlet getting its own level, and now we're into the Chronicles version of level 2 with the Medusa heads and the Medusa boss at the end. Well, the Medusa boss is not going to be a giant head. Fortunately, even though this is made for hardcore gamers, the spike hazards in this game do not insta-kill you the way they do in Castlevania 1. That's one thing that's different. I gotta give them credit for that. There's nothing I hate more than insta-kills. Ghosts look pretty cool. I don't like these eyeballs, but Chronicles sure does. Another thing that I really should point out is that the stairs are back to the way they were in the NES games. This game is like a really... I should have played this game way sooner than I did, because I was going in release order. And so when I got to Chronicles, I was like, well, there's this one version of the game that's from 93, and then it also comes with another version of the game that's from like 2001. So when should I play this? Should I play this after 4, or should I play this after, like at the very end? And I went with playing it at the very end because I was like, well, the 2001 version might be different. So I should, so that would, and technically that would be like later in the release order, and I'm going by American release order, so I made an error. I really should have played this. The smartest time to play this would have been right after 3, because I would have been still in the same, because it plays exactly like 3. There's no extra movement shit. You can't jump, you're stapled to stairs, you can't jump off them, you can't backflip, you can't, there's no actually there is multi-directional whipping, you might have noticed, but it's only downwards. You can't whip up, you can only whip down while jumping. And another thing that's been incorporated from the NES Castlevania games is bosses that get cheesed by sub-weapons, as you will see shortly. This boss is actually really fucking hard. Like, this is the biggest difficulty change between bosses compared to, like, comparing the NES Castlevania 1 boss incarnations with their Chronicle versions. This chick is actually fucking insane. She just, like, walks at you. Unless you keep her consistently pinned in a corner. And there are a couple ways to do that. You can do it with the whip, actually. If you get the right rhythm down, you can actually just hit her with the whip over and over again, and she'll just get knocked into the corner and won't move. But it's much easier to do it with the cross, because you can get safer distance on her. And because you can keep throwing crosses and keep maintaining damage, so there's like she's never going to have any time to advance. That's what that boss is. Was I in the middle of saying something? Yeah, I was going to talk about the differences. Oh no, I already talked about the differences. God damn, I don't even know where the fuck I am today, man. Actually, I do know where I am. I'm in the clock tower. Level 5, clock tower. Clock tower level. Chronicles decided that with the NES Castlevania games, what Castlevania 1 was really missing was a dedicated clock tower level. And people talk about this level as a severe difficulty spike, which it is and it isn't to me, because the big difference between this clock tower level and other clock tower levels like it that I've played before, and this isn't just about the NES Castlevania games, this is about Super Castlevania 4, like level A in Super Castlevania 4 is a clock tower level, is that because this is advanced... What am I fucking doing? Okay, well actually that's good, because that demonstrates what I was about to mention. Because this is an advanced game for an advanced system, it has the capability to scroll the screen downwards if you fall off of something. See, if what had just happened there had happened in Super Castlevania 4, I would be dead. Because Super Castlevania 4 could scroll the screen up, but didn't know how to scroll it back down again. So, but with this game, fortunately, all these clock tower stages are self-contained, logically consistent environments where you can climb up them and then you can fall back down them. So, so it is hard, but it also is not going to insta-kill you for fucking up all the verticality, which is a really important distinction, I think, to be made. If you're going to evaluate clock tower levels, I think you have to divide them up into which ones instantly kill you for falling down and which ones don't. This one has a couple of insta-kill spots, like those spikes will instantly kill you, but the platforming in and of itself does not, which is important. But the big difficulty spike that people mention when they talk about this level is the boss, which this part is actually really hard, because you have two options. You can either... Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, yeah, I forgot that I did that. You have two options. You can either crouch beneath it and wait for it to swing past you, then try to jump across the gap, or do what I just did there, if you've got enormous balls, and jump over it, across the gap, onto the other conveyor belt. And that part's really hard because you're trying to do a really precise jump, and you're trying to like really precisely control your positioning while you're on conveyor belts that are moving you around. So that part is actually way more hazardous than any other. In terms of environmental hazards in this level, that part is absolutely the worst. All this platforming shit coming up here is really not that bad, although this does have more dumb beginner's traps, like all these gears that fall down. There's no indication of which gears are going to fall down when. You just have to play the level, and you have to know which ones are going to show up when. And there's a meat in that wall, but I'm not going to get it yet, because the big hazards in this level are these floating eyes that show up. There are 3 floating eyes, and like a lot of enemies that change their behavior depending on what position you're facing, they are best fought with generous horizontal space, which of course you don't have here. So getting into the correct position to kill them without taking damage is actually really hard. Excuse me, and here what I'm doing is I'm trying to trigger one of the gears. Yep. Actually, something that I mentioned, I told a horrible lie earlier, which is that this game controls identically to the NES Castlevania games. That's not actually true. They did add a new thing, which is that you can change your direction mid-air, which is useful in terms of situations like that when you're trying to trigger a gear, but generally speaking, I mean, I'll take it. I'll take it over nothing. You know what I mean? Any movement capabilities in a game like this, that's like this hard, I can't complain that it's present. But I really missed having Rondo and Dracula X style, like jumping and then reversing your direction in midair to whip. You can't really do that here. To whip while maintaining your forward momentum, you can't do that here, because if you turn around in midair, you're going to completely change the direction that you're moving in. So, not ideal, not really what I would like, and very rarely useful. It sounds like a big deal, like having more air control, even in just a very minor, limited way, sounds like a big deal, but it's usually not important. And this is the part of the level that people always talk about, this boss. And I will admit, this boss is fucking hard. It might not look hard here, because I'm gonna do some shit that's gonna just fuck up this bitch's whole entire day. But there's a couple reasons why this is working. So for one reason, one thing right off the bat is I just practiced a lot. This was a save state drill boss, which I hadn't had to do for a long time. And the second thing is that her AI just like didn't do anything. What she's supposed to do there is jump back and forth between those 2 sides of the clock, break pieces off of the wall, and then just chuck that shit at you like over and over again. And she jumps around like she's on crack, and she's really hard to hit. But there, for some fucking reason, she just didn't do anything. Like her AI just jumped around and then just got hit, and then jumped around and didn't do anything. She only got to tear off one chunk of the wall. Like normally in that fight, she could tear off the entire wall. Like both of those entire walls get like torn off, and then she starts tearing numbers off of the clock and throwing that shit at you. So that's just a weird. Maybe that's what those people were talking about when they talked about the AI in this game being nerfed. Maybe she's more consistently aggressive than the original X68 version, but I really don't know. And besides, she's super aggressive sometimes anyway, but I don't... These fucking gargoyles... Okay, here's what's happening. I want the stopwatch and that torch, but sometimes... This is another thing I don't get. Sometimes those gargoyles will stop spawning, and sometimes they don't stop spawning. And it seems like if you get far enough down the screen, they do stop spawning, but then sometimes they don't stop spawning. So sometimes I'll kill a gargoyle, jump and get that stopwatch, and then fall right into a gargoyle that's spawning. But then sometimes I do, and it's not spawning. Do you understand what I'm saying? I hope so. And that's bad because this level has, I think, 1 meat in it the entire way, and I have to get through This level overall is not too hard. Well, actually, this part is pretty tricky. But fortunately, this was learnable. I had like a set strategy for this where it's like 3, 4 jump, 5, 6 jump whip, 7. I'm counting the sections. 8 stopwatch. Yeah, when you jump on the 8th section, stopwatch, it freezes the Medusa head, so you can jump over 1, and then the second one goes right over you, and then the last 2 go right over you. So that's just about. That was just a matter of learning it. And once I got that pattern down, that's why the stopwatch was necessary, because it's hard to maintain the pattern of jumping and whipping them past that 8th platform for some reason. I don't really remember why. Something about the height that you're at when you jump and whip, and like the height that they spawn at. I don't know exactly. Now we're in the most bizarre stage of the entire game. Some things about this game are just fucking weird, and this is one of them. I pick up the axe because this whole stage is nothing but a bunch of stairs and a bunch of verticality, and you gotta throw, and being able to throw axes at things above you instead of trying to like whip at them is much more convenient. This stage is just fucking weird. Like those little clown dudes can like walk off the edges of platforms sometimes. The bats are sort of like less aggressive versions of the eyes, where they'll sort of take these long, circuitous, circular paths around you, and eventually, maybe sometimes, kind of wander into you. But they're very they're very easy to avoid. The female dolls are the ones you got to worry about because they will auto dodge out of the way of your whip swings, kind of like the harpies in Rondo will do. They're not as good at it as the harpies in Rondo are. They will stay. I don't know how exactly it works, but they will still sometimes get caught by your whip swings. They're especially not good at dodging downward whip swings. You jump and whip down diagonally. And here I'm baiting these two over. They're also not good at dodging the axe. And yeah, you'll notice this here. They're moving based on how I'm moving. So if I stop moving, they stop moving. But here, fortunately, I'm able to kind of herd this one downwards with a couple of whip swings, and then take it out like that. So these things are pretty interesting, actually. I don't really like... I don't like the concept of this stage. I don't like creepy dolls. I don't like doll enemies. I think it's kind of... But it is really interesting to me that they move based on how you move. It gives you a degree of control that a lot of floating, spinny, fuck-aroundy kind of enemies in Castlevania games don't usually have. And you can just kill them before they wake up to completely bypass the problem, so that's all fine. I don't know, I don't get it. Oh, that's worth mentioning too. So the armored knights in this game, if you hit them if you manage to hit them without hitting their shields, they'll get killed in one shot. Which is pretty neat. But it's pretty hard to do. You have to hit them like you notice here I'm hitting that guy at roughly the same height that I was the last guy, but I wasn't close enough to him. The the edge of your whip has to get like not just around underneath his shield, but also pretty far into his body. Let's take him down. Yeah, I don't get the Tower of Dolls. I don't know who Dracula's making dolls for. It's kind of strange. Cool music though. I like the music in this stage a lot. Both of the pieces of music to play. And now here's the doppelganger fight. Anybody ever played Zelda 2? I guess in 1990, I guess it took a while for them to program AI that could figure out what to do if somebody was ducking. You also might notice, if you watch my other videos, that the layout of this room is extremely similar to the Solel fight from Belmont's Revenge. Except without the little gap in the middle. I don't really know what the intention was in terms of how you were supposed to fight that guy, because without the crouch in a corner and spam the attack button, it kind of seems like a crapshoot. With the Solel fight, it was very clearly like you're supposed to abuse the holy water, you're supposed to jump over the platforms. This guy, I feel like, will just chase you, and plus he comes with the same sub-weapon you do, which is why picking up the dagger there is important, because if that guy has the axe or has any other sub-weapon, that crouch in the corner shit does not work. He will fuck you up in 2 seconds. I don't know what happens if you go in with a stopwatch. I'm guessing nothing. Because I don't think they would give a boss the ability to like freeze time and like stun you and then hit you. So, but I don't know. Here's the prison stage where the Grim Reaper lives. I should have taken that stopwatch, actually. I didn't because I don't know why I didn't, but I actually should have, because that bone thrower up on the top there's a couple of ways to try to deal with it. He's mostly just there to fuck with you as you're trying to go through all these combat challenges down here, but he also becomes an obstacle, and a pretty important one, at the very end. What you're supposed to, yeah, once he's down here on this platform, you're kind of fucked. What I'm trying to do here, and what I'm going to try to do over and over again, is I'm trying to drop a holy water and then get him to jump into the flame, but the flame doesn't last long enough to hit him by the time I can herd him back over there. So, and he's not going to jump back up onto their platform, so I'm kind of fucked. Maybe what I could have tried to do there is run way back, and he might have jumped back up onto the top platform and follow me. What I think the game wants you to do there is try to get ahead of him, so that way he's behind you and you can try to get up those stairs onto that first platform while he's still up on the second higher one. This big freaky fucking thing is so weird. But fortunately, you can just duck underneath it. And kill it like that. And enemies are respawning again. Another relic of the past. I like this game. It's really a shame about level 2 because this game is otherwise really good. It's I think it's exactly what it's setting out to be, which is sort of a game exactly in the same vein as the NES games, with a couple of little tweaks here and there. The being able to whip down or whip diagonally while you're jumping isn't that big of a deal, and the game doesn't. It's a big deal for spots like the Tower of the Dolls, but that's the thing where I think what I said about Castlevania 4 was that there are combat sections of the game that don't feel like they were designed around the 8-directional whipping. With this game, it's the opposite, where they gave you this capability and then they included sections of the game very clearly feel like they were designed around that capability. I guess if I did have one complaint to make about this game, besides level 2, it's that certain parts of it are pretty goofy. I think the skeletons playing spike bone jump rope are a little bit silly. I think the Tower of the Dolls is just a strange concept. And then I have a couple of other gripes. But not very many. I don't really like... I like... Level 5 in Castlevania 1 is so cool because it's just pure combat the whole way. But here they decided to add a lot of annoying environmental hazards that you have to avoid, which is kind of interesting if it's those things that are swinging back and forth back there, like the two things that I had to jump over and like navigate around and fight the red skeleton. Like that's pretty cool. When it's just shit you have to wait for, like spikes going up and down, I'm really not a big fan. Another thing that's actually worth noting about this level is that the time, and this is another thing that I've heard is a PS1 original mode problem, is that the timer in some of these levels is actually kind of relevant. If you spend too much time, because there's a moment up here this is a funny difference actually. In Castlevania 1, it's one red skeleton next to in front of a bunch of coffins. But then in Chronicles, they put like 8 of them up here, and you have to herd them all over here to open up a staircase to like get to safely interact with a staircase. Excuse me, and go down it without getting hit. Ah, shit. Oh well. And here I just wait on top of the stairs, kill him, go down. Alright, yeah. So what I was trying to do there was whip down at the guy. Didn't work, of course. I guess one thing I should mention is that this version of level 5 is a lot more fucked up than the Castlevania 1 version is. The Castlevania 1 version just has a couple of pieces of equipment and then some like armor. This shit's like blood and people getting dismembered. And this Frankenstein mini-boss is not worth fighting, because he has way too much health and his attacks are way too hard to dodge. You should just do exactly what I did there. I think that's the whole reason that ledge even exists, to be honest. And oh yeah, that's another thing. Apparently Dracula, I don't know what the hell's going on here. I don't know if these are fetuses or what. I think these might be fetuses that you kill that die in explosions of blood. I like this level conceptually. I like all this fucking weird skeletons and the experiments and the shit in jars. Although I guess Dracula must spend time down here, although I don't really know what he's doing. It's a consolidation of like a laboratory and library level into one. And level 5 of original Castlevania. And the reason I have the axe here, I picked up the axe on purpose, is just to kill this turret. That turret is really easy to kill in Castlevania 1 because in Castlevania 1 the red skeletons are much slower and they stay down for much longer. In Castlevania Chronicles, the red skeletons got buffed significantly, where they move much faster and they stay down for like 1 to 2 seconds before they get right back up again. So that's pretty fucking nuts. End up picking up the cross for the Grim Reaper fight instead of the Holy Water because I'm guessing the Holy Water stun lock doesn't work in this game. I actually never really tried it, but I also get the feeling that the cross is just kind of cleaner for this hallway here coming up. That's bad. The cross bounces off of those off of the shield, the knight's shields too, so it doesn't do any damage. Which I think was the case in Castlevania 1 too. I don't remember which games the knights take damage from sub-weapons, which ones they don't. Here's here's Dracula's little gallery. I complained in Castlevania 1 about the paintings all being blank, but here they're definitely not. It's pretty fucked up. I guess Dracula's only kidnapping blondes. Now it's the Grim Reaper fight, and although it's not the Holy Water Stunlock, it's similar in theme. The idea is just to like just slam him in this corner over and over again and get in as much damage as possible before he starts summoning his scythes. Um, yeah, I guess he could go incorporeal and stop taking damage, so the Holy Water Stunlock probably doesn't work. And this is really a fight that's just decided by how quickly you can whittle him down. It really is a race, because if you don't kill him for too long, he'll go up to the top of the screen and summon like a black hole that like fucks with like sucks you into the center of the like sucks you towards it, and also like sucks all his scythes towards it, so like you can't move and you can't dodge, and then he's throwing scythes at you and you're just gonna fucking die. I don't know how you'd survive that attack. I think the design of the fight is that you're supposed to kill him before he does that. It's just my opinion. And now we are on the last level, which accomplishes something that I think very few other Castlevania games are able to ever really pull off, which is making the last level actually the hardest one. Um, Thinking back to the other Castlevania games that I've played, usually there's some problematic stage or boss like towards the middle that is a big run killer, but then once you're in the home stretch, you're kind of safe. That's not the case here. The big issue with the last level of Chronicles is that there is one meat in this stage, but it's positioned in a place that's very unhelpful. Where it's positioned at the very end of stage 22, which is the stage here, and this is the easiest of the 3 stages. This is by far the easiest stage to get through without taking any damage, because these guys either die in one hit, or it's very easy to keep distance on them and fight them without taking damage. So this part is not hard, but there's a meat at the end of this part, and not for the really difficult parts, which come right after it. And the meat is in kind of an out of the way place. I don't think I'm even gonna get to it, because I don't think I take any damage here. Because like I said, it's not hard to get through this without taking damage. But the big problem is this part coming up here, because okay, so a chandelier is gonna fall down in a second. Fires are all over the place, and these fire knights are gonna show up. These fire knights are. It took me a while to figure out how to fight them. What you're supposed to do is that, where because if you just whip them, they'll bring up their guard. But if you whip them, and then like you pause for just long enough, and then whip them again, after they guard, they'll bring up their swords to attack, and you can sort of get this timing down where you have to hit them. But what makes them hard is that when they do the downward swing, that's just like a basic attack in front of them. When they do the upward swing, they're firing a projectile at you that travels along the floor. And you can kind of see it through the fire, but the fire all over the screen I'm guessing intentionally makes it difficult to see that. So you just have to jump when you see them do that, and you can't jump, and you have to be careful about jumping at them. It's not like if they do the overhand swing, you can't jump at them after they do the overhand swing, like, oh no, I'm safe, because they have a tendency to follow up the overhand swing with the underhand swing, which will hit above them and in front of them. So if you try to jump at them after they do the overhand swing, then they'll just fucking hit you. Excuse me, with the underhand swing. That's why you have to wait until they're... That's why you have to do the bring up their guard and then hit them before they can attack you again type of thing. This part is also really hard. Not necessarily on the first loop. Well, I haven't even talked about loops yet, but I'll have to talk about that in a bit. This part is difficult because of this jump right here. This is the 7B jump, but it's less consistent. 7B jump I was able to do pretty much every time after I figured it out, but then with this it was like, it always just felt like a crapshoot, because the margin I feel like is even thinner than the 7B jump. But I got through it. And then this part is not difficult because you have access to the stopwatch. This part's pretty hard if you don't, because you have to deal with these maids jumping around, and you have to react to the cats correctly. This part's also pretty silly. I don't know why Dracula has robot maids in the year 1651 or whatever, but I guess he's fucking Dracula. Maybe that's what all that research in the laboratory was for. He was collecting research to perfect his somebody said ninja maidens, which I think is funny. There's a way to. Okay, so you're not going to see it in any of the videos that I post, but those crazy-looking maids up there will shoot these projectiles at you that burst apart on the floor and then turn into smaller projectiles that like home in on you. And there's a way to fight them, but it's just so much simpler to just stop, watch, and kill them because the projectiles are pretty fucking hard to dodge. And yeah, loops. Okay, so most older Castlevania games, right? NES, Castlevania 1, Castlevania 3, Castlevania 4 had hard modes that were triggered by you finish the game and then the game restarts over again in a second version of the game. Chronicles, because it's made for hardcore gamers with big balls, has 6 of those. It'll keep getting harder for 6 additional loops. And I'm going to talk more about that when I post a video of that, but I just wanted to establish that this version is not the hardest version. Not even close. But I'm going to have to talk more about that later. What I'm going to talk about now is the Dracula fight. It's the classic Castlevania 1 Dracula fight with a couple of changes. He throws the wine glass on the floor. That's where that's from. Any of you who are familiar with the fact that he does that. And he, instead of looking like Donald Trump, he looks like the Joker this time. So that's what's going on here. I don't know why exactly, but for some reason I found it easier to do this fight if I jumped forward and whipped him instead of just jumping and whipping him. And actually, if you're insane, you can hit him twice per teleport. There's a very specific timing. You can hit him right when he phases in, and then jump again right over his fireballs. But I didn't want to try that because this was fucking hard. I just didn't want to fuck with him. And because of Phase 2. Because there is a proper Phase 2 for this. This isn't like Castlevania 4 where there's like a Phase 1 where he just goes crazy again. There's a whole Phase 2. That's what this is right now. This is the Phase 1 where he goes crazy. It doesn't make any difference at all to the strategy. You're still just jumping over the fireballs. Whether it's 3 fireballs or 5 fireballs or 7 fireballs, you're still just jumping over them and hitting him. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. The Joker's going down. And I guess this is a situation where being able to turn around mid-air, mid-jump, and change your position is useful because I don't have to... I can just get a distance away from him that's acceptable and then just jump and turn in mid-air without having to turn around ahead of time. So that's nice, I guess. And now we're on Phase 2. Phase 2 of Dracula and Castlevania Chronicles is much, much different from Phase 2 in Castlevania 1 because you can't stun lock him with the Holy Water. I've tried it, believe me. This is why I think the Holy Water stun lock probably didn't work. I have tried fucking everything. You can't stun lock that motherfucker. He will eventually break free and pull some shit on you. And the fireballs that he shoots are actually possible to dodge if you crouch right in front of him. He has a claw attack also that you can kind of dodge if you're like right in front of him, crouching down. What's almost impossible to dodge is when he jumps up in the air and shoots like green balls around the floor, which you might have seen him do there if you were eagle-eyed and you were paying attention. That's really hard to dodge because you have to jump. It's not just enough about jumping far away from him to not get hit by the balls. You also have to jump like over the balls because one of the balls will go out far enough that if you jump away from him, it'll still hit you. So you have to jump and then jump again, and then real quick try to reposition yourself based on where he is. You're going to take damage on that fight, man. The strategy is to get there with enough health that you don't die when he inevitably damages you. And usually it's like, if you get there with full health, you're probably good. If you get there with 3 health, you're good. If you get there with 2 health, you're in pretty rough shape. You're probably not going to make it. And if you get there with 1 health, you have to play like a fucking god and get incredibly lucky to get through that fight without dying. That's my my appraisal. And that's what I mean when I talk about meat availability being such a problem, which is that everything from the fire hallway up through the end of the Dracula fight you do with the same health pool. So you have to get through the fire fight, the bats, the ninja maids, the cats, and Dracula all on the same health bar. That's what makes that part so hard. But it's going to get even harder. This game gets much, much harder on the higher loops. That's what I'm going to upload next. Look out for that. Love you guys. Have a tag.